Hi, welcome back to my channel. Since it's November now, the weather is getting significantly wetter and colder here. I would imagine probably snow will be coming our way soon. And I am in need of some more cozy winter clothes. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try to create a dress that is inspired by something that I saw in an episode of Friends. It's from the first season. It's this dress here that Rachel's wearing. So I'm going to create a jumper dress to be worn over a sweater or shirt, whatever, that is inspired by, not an exact copy, but inspired by this one that she is wearing in Friends. I'm going to make a couple of changes to it. It's going to be a little tiny bit more 60s than this, but it's definitely mostly going for that 90s inspiration. Let's dive right into it. So here's the sketch of what this jumper will look like. So I had a couple of choices to make. It's going to be about 2 inches above the knee. Obviously there's no knees on this. And then I was trying to decide if I wanted it to have a scoop back or 2 cross straps. And I think I'm going to do the crossed straps. My fabric is this wonderful plaid flannel. It's a bit darker than the one that she wears in the show, but it has a similar style to it, especially if you back away a little bit. And I basically want this to give the feeling of the garment from the show without being an exact copy. It's going to be changed a little bit for my own, wearability. Okay, so I've started drafting the pattern for the plaid jumper. What I did was I took a large piece of paper and I folded it in half. So there's actually 2 halves here. So I took the center front piece of the skull dress that I made and matched the center front line with the fold in the paper. I traced it and then grabbed the side front piece. And I lined up the sort of where the notches are and then pivoted it so that the straps were more upright rather than slanting away from my neck, because on the skull dress sometimes it does feel like the straps might slip off your shoulders even though they don't. I then pivoted the side front piece back so that the corner matched up with where the corner of the center front piece was and extended that waistline using the bottom of the side front piece. Then I drew the side on using the front side as a guide, except I did make it about 2 inches lower than the arm side on the skull dress because it is going to be a jumper, so it shouldn't come all the way up into my armpit. Then I used my French curve ruler to draw the armhole, and then to get the skirt piece, I took an A-line skirt that I had drafted and confirmed fit me, lined up the outside edge of that with the outside edge of the waistline that I had drawn from the bodice, and traced the side of that. Did end up being about 2 inches bigger in the front than the back because of seam balancing, which is great. To get the back piece, I used the center back and side back pieces in a similar way as I used the front to get the waistline. Drew that, and then I used my A-line, and then I lined up my front bodice piece that I had just made with the waistline on the back and used that to get the side piece. I then drew a line from the side to the center back with a little bit of a curve to it and down into a V. So I realized that once I put my mock-up together that I needed to make some adjustments. I'm going to be lowering the neckline by 2 inches right here. Going to be lowering the armhole. I was getting a little bit of gaping at the bust here, which is part of why I'm taking this in. As well as, ignore this line. I'm going to actually be taking some of this waist curve out so that it kind of hangs a little more straight down and gives me a little bit of a looser fit. Okay, so I've got my main fabric and my facings, so I'm going to start stitching the side seams of this together, and then once they're all, like, in just two solid pieces, I will put my facing onto my main fabric and stitch all that together. Once I was ready to start constructing, I started with some stay stitching on the armholes and neck holes of the front, and then also the top edge of the back, just because I didn't want that V to stretch out. I then pinned the side seams together. I'm going to be finishing these after I stitch them together, because that way I won't end up with any stretched out edges. So I stitched the side seam together on one side, and then on the other side I stitched it up to about 9 inches from the top, and then switched to a basting stitch so that I could use that section for sewing in my zipper. Next, I overcast my side seams so that I wouldn't have to worry about any fraying. Okay, I've pinned my zipper in. Time to stitch it down. And then sewed the straps to the front piece. Okay, so this is the facing. I have sewn it together on one side, and then I also sewed the straps, like the back straps, to the top at the shoulders. So this is the interior of it, and this is the part that's actually going to touch my body. And the part with the seam allowance is going to be the part that touches the dress itself. So I'm going to press the shoulder seams and the side seam on this, and then I'm going to pin the facing to the actual fashion fabric and sew it together. I then trimmed the corners of the straps as well as the seam allowance of the top after understitching. Then I turned these straps right side out as well as the facings into the garment. I hand stitched the sides of the facings against the zipper, and then also down to the side seams so that they wouldn't just be flapping around in there. It was time for the buttons. These are not going to be actual usable buttonholes. I'm just using the buttons to stitch the straps to the garment. There's no point in these being functional, so I figured I would just save myself some time. Okay, so I attached the buttons and I tried the dress on, and the straps are actually about 2 inches too long. So what I'm going to do, going to use the same buttons. Actually went and got more today. And I'm going to take more of the strap down the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have this line up at the edge of the back, and then I'm going to actually put 2 of these buttons. So I did an Instagram poll, and between a couple of larger buttons that I had, realized that they were too large, and these guys, which are actually the same buttons that I used on my Hocus Pocus shirt, are actually about halfway between the 2 that were chosen, so it works out perfectly. So I'm just going to pin the straps on, stitch these down, and then hem it, and it will be done. So I remembered about 90% of the way through this project that I had purchased some quilting cottons that had Chandler and Joey, as well as the chick and the duck on them. So I decided to make myself a mask to go with this outfit. It doesn't actually like coordinate with it color-wise at all, but I love it anyway. I used the same method that I did in my winter 1950s flannel skirt video if you want to see how I make my masks, to put this one together. And it was time to go for a walk outside.